DAB Digital Radio and 1089 and 1053 AM. The Sports Bar on TalkSport.
All right, fans, here we go with the main event of the evening.
Hello, my friends. Good evening to you. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another Andy Goldstein Sports Bar with me, Andy Goldstein. Over there, the fun boy, the duck lover, it's Jason Cundy.
Has anyone seen Mesut Ozil?
Still looking. A huge show tonight begins with the former boxer Nick Blackwell with us in the studio for his first ever interview since those horrifying injuries that ended his career 2.5 years ago. Recovering from 2 comas, having to learn to walk and talk again. He's here for the first hour to tell us his remarkable story. So if you have plans tonight, cancel them.
Also coming up between now and 1am, the Mirror's Darren Lewis joins us in the studio. We'll have tomorrow's back pages tonight, a dollop of blankety blank, our weekly film chat, Florida Man news, and we'll find out what happens when One Word Billy meets Bernard Hopkins.
It's happening. Tony Sports Show on National Radio, taking your calls Monday to Thursday from 10pm to 1am. Tony Goldstein Sports Bar, it is one of those shows you do not want to miss. It's happening, it's live, it's coming up. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, fun boy.
Good evening.
Now, my friends, in March 2016, our guest tonight was involved in a brutal fight against Nick Eubank Jnr. He collapsed soon after the fight and was placed into an induced coma. In October the same year, following an incident in sparring, he was put back into another coma. He woke up in December that year, had to learn to walk, to talk, to eat again, and tonight joins us in the studio to give us his first ever interview since those events occurred. Welcome back, Nick Blackwell. How are you, Nick?
Love life.
Do you know what? It's so lovely to see you. I was, if I'm being honest, I was a bit nervous about seeing you because I haven't seen you since those incidents occurred. And you came to our studio about an hour ago, and you've just been walking about with a smile on your face, and you've told me how much you're enjoying life, and it's lovely to see you. How are you?
Love life, mate.
Are you good? Are you well?
Yeah, we're all good. Yeah, been running, been doing everything.
Hey, I mentioned there at the top of the show about what you've been through over the last 2.5 years.
That was horrible.
Has that time gone quickly? Does
it
went
feel real quick. Yeah.
Does it feel like a long time ago?
No, it just flew by.
It flew by.
Yeah.
When you look back at that night, if we can, let me take you back to then, if that's all right, to the night of March 2016, that brutal fight it was against Nick Eubank Jr. Do you remember much about that?
Not really, no. I can remember I wasn't throwing as many shots as what I should have, but it is what it is.
Have you watched the fight at all?
Yeah, I've watched it loads of times.
You have?
Yeah.
Why have you watched it?
Because I wanted to.
You wanted to see it?
Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, before we talk about that fight, let me talk about just before that fight, because something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and I saw an interview with you that I don't think many people have seen, which you spoke about just after that Eubank fight, that going into it days before, you weren't feeling quite right. You'd had a heavy sparring session with George Groves.
Yeah, I did.
and even climbing into the ring, even before when they were putting the wraps on, you knew your body wasn't right.
I wasn't right. My left hand side of my body didn't feel right.
What was wrong with you then?
I just don't know.
You didn't feel right going in?
I didn't feel right. All my mates were ringside and they were cheering to me, and I always put my fist up, I walked straight past and blanked them. Didn't even know they were there. So I wasn't right 100% going into the fight.
Okay. And do you think that was part of the problem?
Yeah, it was.
It obviously wasn't the perfect 100% Nick Blackwell climbing into the ring.
100% wasn't 100% me.
And looking back now, because not a lot of people are aware of that. You've not really admitted that before.
I know.
Do you think you were perhaps concussed from the George Groves fight,
I was.
sparring beforehand?
Sparring, George Groves hit me the hardest punch I've ever been hit with.
And that was how long before the fight? Do you remember?
5 days before.
Just 5 days before. And you slept on the back of that sparring. You slept for a long, long time. You had headaches for days afterwards as well.
Yeah.
And you climbed into the ring.
Yeah.
And you fought a brutal fight against Nick Eubank Jr.
I love boxing. That's why I done it.
Did you speak to anyone beforehand?
Yeah.
Did you say perhaps that you weren't feeling
well?
Yeah,
I said to Gareth, I said I'm gonna let him hit me with everything he's got. And Gareth look at.
Okay. And when you look back at that fight, I think the referee stopped it in
10th round.
In the 10th round. It was still, of course, the right decision, but at the time, did you feel it was?
Yeah, it was the right decision, yeah.
And did you feel it at the time? Because listen, you're a warrior. We know that. When you came into the studio the last time with Jay and I, you told us about when you were doing white collar boxing and you had fights in the ring. Then you came out and took on about 5 boxers, five bouncers, I should say, as well. So I get the impression from you then, and I still get it, that you're a bit of a fighter.
Yeah, I love fighting.
And you never know when to quit.
No, exactly. My stupid mistake.
Well, I mean,
but I loved it. That was the thing. I loved it.
So let's move on to when you went into hospital after the Eubank fight and you had this coma. Do you remember much about that? Do you remember coming out of the coma? Do you remember seeing your family and friends?
Yeah, I can remember waking up as best feeling ever, and my dog coming into hospital. I was in a wheelchair. Couldn't walk, couldn't talk properly, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything.
And so this is the second time or the first time?
Second time.
The second time you've come around. Okay.
Mm.
The first time that you came out of the coma from the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, a lot of people were around you, I'm guessing, telling you not to box again.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But I loved it. That's why I went back into it.
Did you realise how dangerous it was to get back in the ring?
Yeah, I know, but I loved it.
And have you...
I shouldn't have went in there, but I did.
And have you heard, apart from... I think he sent you a tweet afterwards, Chris Eubank Jr. Have you heard from Chris Eubank Jr.?
No, nothing.
Nothing at all? Does that upset you?
Not really, no.
It doesn't bother you?
No.
So when you left the ring after that fight was stopped in the 10th, of course we've all seen the scenes where you collapsed and you were on the deck. Between the ring and hospital, you actually died in the in the ambulance.
Yeah, I died. Yeah. Luckily, the doctors kept me alive.
And they injected you with
loads of stuff.
Right. And they brought you, and that how do you know how long that you were dead in the ambulance
I'm not sure.
for?
Quite a while.
Right.
And you obviously were desperate to get back into the ring.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got a license to become a trainer.
Yeah.
So that was the route that you were going to take.
Yeah.
You were going to become a trainer. And then you decided in November of the same year to spar with a guy called Hassan Kakadi.
Yeah.
And that was where the second incident occurred.
Yeah.
Do you remember much about that?
No, not really, no.
Do you blame anyone
No,
about
it was my fault.
That was your fault?
Yeah, it was my fault because I was sparring. I shouldn't have been sparring. It's all my fault.
It's all your fault,
Yeah.
okay. And when that incident occurred, that was in November, and then towards the end of that year, you came out of a coma.
Yeah.
And that was what you were talking about. Your dog jumped on your lap. I think I've seen pictures, a video of that. The dog just licking your face.
Licking my face.
And I'm thinking, someone at least get the dog off his face. I know you were enjoying it at the time. And then, of course, you've come out of a coma for a second time, thankfully.
Yeah.
But completely different to the first time you came out of the coma. Whereas the first time you came out of the coma,
100%.
you were 100%.
I had to walk, talk, eat again, learn everything, how to do everything again.
And when did you realise just how much of an uphill struggle and task that was going to be for you? Did someone sit you down and say it's different this time?
Yeah. My family sat me down.
And how strong have they been around you?
Oh, amazing. My dad had been amazing. My sister, my brother. I love them. I love them to pieces.
And you've had to learn to walk again?
Yeah, everything. I was in a wheelchair for ages.
Okay. Do you remember how long you were in a wheelchair for?
I can't remember. Quite a while.
Okay. And you had to learn to talk again?
Yeah, talk, eat, drink.
Wow.
I had to learn how to do everything again.
Incredible. What hospital were you at? There was obviously loads of people that helped you that I'm sure you want to give a little mention to.
Yeah, I want to thank every person at Biru, Southmead, everyone. Just thank you for saving my life, basically. Because they did.
They did save your life.
Yeah.
And how long have you been out of hospital now for?
Quite a while now.
Okay. And I know I said it at the top of the interview, but you're obviously loving life. You keep telling us that, and you genuinely have a smile on your face.
I have always got a smile on my face.
How is the recovery going now?
What's really good.
Where are you at? Do you go back there 3, 4, 5 times a week? Do they come to your house? What happens?
No, they come to my house like every 2 months now.
Okay.
They did come there every 2 weeks, but now they don't really bother now. They come every 2 months, once every 2 months to see what I'm doing.
Okay, and what about you with regards to boxing? Do you still enjoy watching the
I love
sport?
watching boxing.
You like watching?
I love watching, yeah.
Okay, and I'm guessing you still keep fit as well?
Yeah, keep fit. Go running soon.
You still have you run at all?
Yeah, I ran there loads. I ran at Westport also the other day.
You do?
Massive hill.
Well, listen, I'm so glad you've come in.
Yeah, cheers for having me.
When we've got a couple of people in the gallery as well. I know you've got Jamie, who's following you about at the moment, doing a documentary on you.
Yeah.
and she's got some fantastic footage.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to her a bit later on. And I know Dad's here as well.
Yeah, bless him.
So maybe we'll get Dad in and speak to him as well.
Yeah.
So we've got lots to talk about.
Yeah.
I know people are big boxing fans,
Yeah.
and there'll be loads of people tweeting in questions, just about maybe your career or just the people listening might have gone through similar traumas that you've gone through. Are you
Putting
okay?
the hairs of my arms go up.
Are you okay to answer some questions?
Yeah,
that people...
seriously, yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine.
All right, wonderful, Nick. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, and you
Stay
too,
here.
mate.
We're going to have a quick break.
Yeah,
Any
cheers.
questions you got for Nick, tweet me at AndyGolson05 or Jason Cundy05.
Paperback
It's not Beatles night, it's 60s night. I'm reliably informed by Josh. By the way, a bit later on, talking to Josh, the backroom staff. Josh is known as the talent on the show. One Word Billy is... later on in the show, we'll hear when One Word Billy spoke to Bernard Hopkins. Incredible stuff.
So the interview has been completed. It hasn't been.
It has, we're hoping. The only time Bernard Hopkins could do is now.
Billy's
but we
Billy's
can't
way.
do it now, obviously.
No,
so we've sent One More Billy to do our dirty work. The reason we can't do it, if you're just tuning in, is because we have Nick Blackwell in the studio. Before the break, we're hearing from Nick. Of course, we're going to keep Nick in the studio. We've got various people coming in and telling us about their story connected to Nick. In the studio now, bear with me, is Jamie Van de Vijver.
Close.
Go on.
Very close. Van de Vijver.
That's what I said, isn't it?
Something similar. I've heard
JV, I'll
worse.
call you JV.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
As long as it's not VDV, it's fine.
Okay. Just explain your connection to Nick.
So basically, I was at university studying for media production, and as I was a documentary freelancer for the Army boxing team in Aldershot, by my area where I lived, Nick came in to see the lads just to give, after the first time round, after the first incident with Chris Eubank, and just explain how hard boxing can be. So that's when I approached him and said, look, my final year of university is coming up. Would you mind if I just do my final project on you? You know, I'll follow you around. And he said, yeah, that's fine. And then unfortunately, 2 months into it, that's when the second incident happened. It was really hard, but we can just make the most out of it, and the fact that we've made such an amazing amazing documentary that we'll just have to wait and see.
Did you think about pulling the documentary after the second incident?
It was a bit difficult because the main aim, the first point of the whole point of my documentary was to be about Nick, about how he wanted to pursue surfing. He wanted to pursue surfing after the first incident. So I was going to call it Still Fighting. You're still fighting for your life, kind of still fighting in sports. But unfortunately, when the second incident happened, it kind of changed everything for me. It was really tough because when your main character is, as horrible as it sounds, to say that he's in a coma, what do you do? You know, so struggled, but I think I've stood by him. And I think he's one of the most strongest people I've ever met in my life.
Did while he was in that coma, were you still, I suppose in some ways it's difficult to continue the documentary, but were you still following day by day what was going on with, because obviously he had to have a brain operation. So,
yeah, well,
was that included in it, or did you stop filming? How did that work?
I kind of hit a brick wall then, because I didn't have the contacts as such. I didn't have that close relationship with his family. I was a bit apprehensive about approaching and going ahead with this film because I didn't know what they were going to think. But I, stood my ground, and I pursued it and made my way around it. I contacted his trainer, Gary Lockett, and he really helped me out and made me gain that confidence and that relationship now that I have with the Blackwell family. Okay,
I was going to ask you actually about your relationship because not all families at that time of despair would, welcome with open arms strangers into their lives to document what's happening to their son, at these horrific times. And they were, of course, horrific times. They obviously did that. They welcomed you in. They sound to be very accommodating as well. Were you surprised just how welcomed you were?
I was. I mean, to be fair, I never once walked into that hospital with a camera. I said it to his dad, I'll never ever do that. Because the journey he had to go through was horrible, and you either have to think of it, I need to focus on the film, or I focus in the fact that they've got feelings and they're human, and I need to be.
And I appreciate you doing that, Jamie.
And I always said that I'd stood by them, but the fact that the family have welcomed me, it took time, and I don't blame them. You know, in a situation like that, everyone's just going to want to get a little bit of media footage here and there and get a little bit of goss. But that wasn't my aim. That wasn't, for me, it was just a university academic project, and that was it. But now it's turned out to be something that I believe is something amazing, and I think Nick deserves to tell the world what an amazing person he is.
There's no doubt, and you are, Nick. It's quite incredible that Jamie came along when she did. What was it about her? Was it a tweet you sent him?
So
how did you contact him for the first time?
It was the company I used to work for, the Edge Project.
Yeah.
They're a charity-run company. Natalie, at the time, she gave the idea of contacting via Twitter, and they met up for the first time. And then after that, she introduced me to Nick, and that's when we went for lunch.
Yeah.
And
who paid for that?
I think Natalie did, actually.
Oh, okay, fine. On the expense.
That was good. That was good. Yeah, on expense.
Yeah.
And they went for dinner, and then from then on, I used to drive up to Trowbridge and see him and visit him.
Is there any intention to get Chris Eubank Jr. involved at any stage of this?
I would like to, yes. Just not from a nasty side. There's no animosity there. But I think there's a few key points that need to be mentioned. There's a lot of he said, she said kind of thing. And there's a lot that people don't know about Nick behind the closed doors. Especially, you know, who knew about Nick sparring with Gary Groves in front of, you know, in
George Groves.
George Groves, sorry. Oh, God, get the name right. Before the fight, you know, not many people know that.
Have you spoken to George Groves about it at all?
No, I haven't.
Okay. What was it then, Nick, about Jamie and the call when it came in? What was it about that key area that you thought, you know what, this is a key area that I'd quite like to have someone explore my life and document it as my boxing career's taken off?
I just trust Jamie.
You just trust her?
Been there from day one, yeah. Bless her.
But, I mean, it's a hell of a punt for anyone to contact a boxer like Nick, you know, an up-and-coming boxer. There's obviously something that was going to happen in his career, you know, big things expected. Was there any reason you chose him?
I think it was an amazing story, the fact that what he'd just gone through, and the recovery was, I think, 3 weeks after the Eubank fight, and everyone would just say, he's back to his old self. That is the old Nick. But it's like, no, he's not. But yes, he was at the same time. It's really difficult to explain.
So you were with him after he recovered from the Eubank fight?
I met him after he recovered. I wasn't there for the journey.
Right.
But I met him, and that's why we got him down for the Edge Project.
So let me ask, when he decided to go into sparring again, were you aware of this when you were making the documentary?
No one was.
No one was aware. It was behind
was.
closed doors. Now, there's a few people afterwards that questioned his trainer.
Yeah.
But I'm led to believe that his trainer had absolutely nothing
Gary
to do with that.
Lockett, his trainer, had nothing to do with it.
No.
And there's been a lot of judgment about that just because he was his trainer. People just jumped to conclusions, the fact that he was involved. Gary Lockett, I can swear by it that he had nothing to do with it.
Okay. So when was the first time you learned that Nick had gone back in the ring, was sparring, and another injury had occurred?
Well, I had called Nick to arrange a second interview for my documentary. So I said to him, I will be round tomorrow around so-and-so in the morning. Yeah, that's fine. So I drove up there. It's about a 2-hour drive, and I get there, and his car's not in the car park. So I'm going, right, he's not here, he's forgotten. And I'm banging on the door, no answer. Then the guy underneath the shop from his flat says he's not here, and he won't be here for a very long time. And I went, right, okay. So I was very angry. I was like, he stood me up, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I left it. I said, something's not right. So I went home, and then Sunday morning that week in November, I can't remember the exact date, it was all over the papers that he went into a coma.
Well, the hairs on my arms got up.
How do you feel when you hear that? Does it feel like a different person we're talking about?
Well, me?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, you can. It sends shivers down your spine.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Was that the first time you got back into a ring?
Yeah.
That incident. It was. There wasn't perhaps another couple of sparring sessions before that. There wasn't nothing. That was the first time.
Yeah.
How long were you sparring for? Do you remember? Was it minutes or a long time?
12 rounds.
You did 12 rounds, and it was at the end of the 12 rounds that you thought something's not. And did you collapse after that, or
No.
what happened?
Just didn't feel right.
And you took yourself to hospital, or you got an ambulance, or how did that happen?
Took myself to the hospital.
And that's the last thing you remember.
So you drove there.
Yeah, I didn't drive. My mate drove. Yeah.
You didn't drive, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And that's the last you remember is your mate driving you to hospital after those 12 rounds.
Yeah.
And you've walked into the hospital, and what was the process after that? How did that develop? You've obviously seen a nurse or a doctor. What happened from that point?
I can't remember.
You can't remember. What have they told you?
Can't remember.
Right.
Is there a lot of things that you can't remember from the last 2.5 years?
Can't remember quite a lot. It's slowly come back to me.
And when you look at the images that Jamie's got throughout her documentary, does it feel like that's you, or does it feel like you're looking at someone else?
Well, it just put shivers down my spine how far I've come.
Yeah.
Mental.
You really have. I mean, when I saw the footage earlier on today, Jamie, I saw you around lunchtime, and some of the footage I saw, I couldn't believe how short a time ago it was that Nick was sat in that chair, unable to move his hands, unable to move his feet, unable to talk, unable to eat. I mean, it's quite remarkable in such a short space of time where he's come from. And for you to document that journey, that's quite incredible, isn't it?
I mean, that's how much it means to me. He has been through a lot. And I think it's very important that people should know the dangers of boxing, understanding as well the passion there is behind it. So I feel very privileged to have managed to get that all together. But as well, it's a bit of an eye-opener for Nick to be able to see what he's gone through, because I know the second recovery, it's hard to remember.
Nick, let me ask you, Jamie just mentioned there it's part and parcel of boxing. Is that how you view it? That you knew the dangers? Every boxer knows the dangers when they climb into the ring?
I just loved it. That's why I done it.
And do you think, knowing what's happened to you, do you think that precautions should be put in place to avoid similar things happening, or do you think that's just the nature of the beast?
Sparring should happen.
What should they do? Do you think
not sparring like 2-3 weeks before a fight.
Okay, so you sparred days before that.
5 days before a fight. Yeah.
You were sparring with George Groves 5 days before the Eubank Jr. fight.
Yeah.
And you think it should be maybe illegal to spar within 2 weeks?
Yeah. 2-3 weeks
of a big fight.
Yeah.
And what about being checked before you get into the ring for a major fight? Because you said that you still weren't right. You had loss of feeling in like the left side of your body.
Get a medical or something done.
Get a medical.
Yeah.
But you know boxers, and we've heard so many fights. Instantly, I'm thinking about David Hay when he had a broken toe and he climbed into. Boxers will cover up any injury to make sure that fight happens. So it's a bit of a poison chalice.
I suppose that's why you've got to try in some ways take, like you said, a medical, an in-depth medical, and trying to find out. There are ways they can somehow build a picture. You may not get the complete truth from the boxer, but there's ways medical people can, scans in particular, they may have revealed something.
I think it's difficult as well, because I remember asking that question in my first ever interview with Nick, and I said, why didn't you say anything? And he went, what would you do if you've trained and fought for so many years of your life and you've got the biggest fight of your life coming? Are you really going to turn around? Some people will agree and go, yeah, I will turn around and say I don't feel 100%, or actually I'm just going to risk it and smash this fight.
I trained my whole life for that fight, and that's why I done it.
You presumably don't hold Chris Eubank Jr. responsible at all for the fight. He's going in there to do a job as you were.
Exactly.
And it happened. You've not spoken to him at all since?
No, not yet, no.
Would you like to see him?
Yeah.
You'd like to meet up with him?
Yeah.
Just a private meeting, or would you like
private meeting.
Just to say anything in particular, or just to meet up and say hello?
Just telling me what to blame.
Do you think he feels that he is to blame in some way?
I don't know, probably. But you're in there to try and hurt each other. That's the name of the game.
And going back to the just after that fight, when you recovered 3 weeks, you came out of hospital and it looked like you were going to make a full recovery and live a normal life. Was there no contact at all from him? Did he made no attempt? I know there was a tweet or something went out, but there was no contact, a phone call or asked to meet.
No.
Has that surprised you at all? I mean, I suppose in some ways if it was role reversal, I'm guessing you'd want to meet your opponent.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't really know.
And what about his dad? Because it's quite a famous clip now. At the time, we didn't realise that, but where his dad is basically saying to his son, you've got to work the body more.
I know.
What do you make of that?
Rubbish.
We've got you for another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I know Dad's sitting behind the glass. Okay, let's do it on a vote. Hands up. Who wants to hear from Nick Blackwell's dad?
Yeah,
1,
me.
2, 3. They're all there. John, you got no chance. Hopefully, Dad will be in the studio in just a moment.
People try to put us to down, talking about my generation, just because we get around.
I could just give you when one-word Billy Met Bernard Hopkins update. There is no update. He's still waiting for Bernard Hopkins. So maybe we'll take it off him when we do it live.
Oh, poor Billy.
That would be awful. We have Nick Blackwell in the studio. We were also joined just before the break by Jamie Van de Vijver. And now we've got Dad in the studio. John Blackwell's with us.
Hi.
Dad, good to see you. How are
Hi,
you?
John.
Fine, thanks.
Thank you so much for coming in. I know you came into the studio with Nick and Jamie, and I know you're a little bit apprehensive about coming on air, but it's nice and relaxed. We're all nice and chilled. The reason I wanted to get you in, I just wanted to ask the question, how are you? Because quite often in incidents like this, understandably, the focus, the spotlight is on the person that's been involved in the trauma, and no one really speaks to the family in and around. How are you? Because it must be as horrific as it's been for, of course, Nick over the last 2.5 years. It's, I'm guessing, to a certain extent, been as bad for you and the rest of your family. How are you at the moment?
I'm fine at the moment. Before, when he was in hospital, it was a different matter, for me and my family. It was very hard.
I'm guessing difficult for you, for your wife as well.
Well, I'm divorced now.
Okay. So. but difficult for the whole family.
Yes, it was,
because it's something that, of course, you don't expect once, let alone twice.
No, no, not at all. The first time was bad enough, it was real bad. But the second time was 10 times as bad,
How did you feel? You obviously had no idea that he was going into the ring for the second time to spar. Was there a certain amount of anger and frustration when you heard he'd done it again?
I thought, what the hell's he gone and done? Really, we just didn't know.
Did the family speak to him after the first coma? Was there a conversation that had about not getting back into the ring?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, was it something you felt you had to something? I suppose most people think, well, why has he got back in? I'm guessing you're asking that question as well. But was it tough for him to accept? And one, his career was over, but two, that he was never going to get back in a ring again.
Yeah, very tough. Yeah, that's his job. That's all he knows. That's what he's trained for.
And I've seen interviews with his brother as well. I mean, I'm guessing the whole family had a say in this. Had a conversation with him.
Yeah, we all told him.
And what was his reaction?
Wasn't happy, but I think he accepted it. At the time. So
when you go back a long way before he even climbed in the ring the first time, and you've got your young boy that all of a sudden has found this boxing club round the corner. I'm guessing that's how it works, and he's sparring, and then there's a fight. What was your initial reaction to one of your boys going into boxing?
He said, "What do you want to do that for?" He said, "Oh, I got beat up today." He said, "Oh, I want to learn to, defend myself." I said, "Fine." His mum didn't like boxing, so she was dead against it. But I said, if you want to do it, do it.
And it's not in your background at all. You've not been in the ring. No. And when, of course, he was very successful as an amateur white collar boxer as well. And then, of course, as a young professional. You must have been quite excited and very proud, of course, obviously, of your boy. Yeah. What was your views going into the Eubank Jr. fight? Because we've just heard from Nick that he was sparring 5 days before with George Groves. Took some awful heavy shots.
Yeah.
Which, of course, no boxer wants sparring at any lead up to a big fight, let alone 5 days before. Were you aware of how he was feeling going into the ring?
No, not at all.
He hadn't even confided to you. He hadn't spoken to you. Did you see him in the dressing room before that fight?
No.
And do you not anyways? That's something you just stayed away from?
No, you're not allowed to.
Oh, okay, you don't go in the
security is very tight.
Surely Dad can come in. They don't even allow that.
Chris Eubank's dad did.
Yeah. You were there. You were ringside for that fight.
I was ringside, yeah.
Okay. During the fight, and I watched it again recently, and it was a brutal, horrific fight, if I'm being honest. And I won't say, the referee's got anything, there's no blame at all, because we know what Nick's like, and he wants to keep going, and of course that's exactly what happened. But you could argue that perhaps it might have been stopped earlier, but we're all wise and clever after the event. But what was it like for Dad, sitting there ringside watching his son take a beating like that?
Well, the first round, I knew there was something wrong.
Really, that early on?
He was not boxing as he usually does. I said to my mate, sat next to me, I said, something wrong with him? He said, yeah, there is. So the more and more, as the rounds went on, we thought there's definitely something wrong there. But we just couldn't pinpoint it.
Whenever
he was just taking too many shots.
Whenever we speak to boxers, we're only too aware. We're very fortunate that we speak to plenty of them, both whether it be at the beginning of their career or from at the end. we're only too aware that every time a boxer gets into a ring, he's taking his own life into his hands, or some other people's hands. But every fight, what was it like as a parent going to that fight, knowing that your son potentially could end up in a coma?
I don't think you really think about that. It's not on your radar. I don't think until something happens like that to any boxer, then you get a bit worried. But he had a good spell before. He's in peak of health. You just don't expect it, and it just comes out of the blue.
Let me ask you. You guys have been in the office probably about an hour now, maybe just over. I've only seen Nick with a smile on his face. Whenever I ask how he is, he says he's loving life. Are you surprised just what an amazing recovery he has made? I'm sure there's a long way, of course, to go. But from where he is now, from where he was when he came out of that second coma, are you just stunned at how? I mean, okay. Here's the question: has he had any down days?
No.
No, I mean that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few episodes for lasting 30 seconds or so. Gets a bit bad temper, but don't we all?
Yeah.
Damn right. Well, so what does the future hold? I mean, I'll come to you first, Nick, on this question. Where is Nick Blackwell? Where do you want to be next? Both short term and long term in your life.
Well, I want to open up my own gym. That's what I want to do. I want to do it for a while. I wanted to open up my own healthy eating place. My mate done it, and he's killing it now.
Right.
Okay, well, don't give him a plug. He'll make more money.
and from the family's point of view, I mean, you guys, privately have been to hell and back, I'm guessing. But there is light at the end of this tunnel now, and we just heard what Nick said there. What about the family? How do the family see both the short term and the long term future for Nick?
I'm not sure at the moment. He's still recovering. It's going to take. It takes years. It's not. He's had a very fast recovery, really, but there's still years ahead. It's very slow. It just goes slow. So,
what's been the aftercare from the British Board of Boxing? Have they been involved? Do they help you out in this situation?
No, not at all.
None at all.
Not at all.
None whatsoever.
No.
Have they even phoned up to find out how he's doing?
Not me. No. No, not at all.
Does that surprise you? Does that annoy you?
At the time, I'm not really interested. It's not on my radar. Nick was paramount. Is what we're thinking about. So, no.
And what about Chris Eubank, both of them, Junior and his dad? I mean,
I'm very surprised he didn't get in touch. Really, I know if the shoe was on the other foot, Nick would have been there.
It's all right.
He would have been in the hospital.
Yeah. Why do you think they haven't?
I don't know.
Nick said that he would quite like to meet Chris now.
Yeah.
Would you be angry if you saw them?
No, not at all.
Would you like to see them?
I'm not worried, really.
Either way, you're not fussed.
No, not at all.
But
if Nick's want to see him, you can see him.
But does it anger you that they haven't been in contact?
Not now, but at the time, yes. Yeah, angered a lot of people. They were out celebrating. He was in a coma. So
what was it? How did you find out the news that the second time that Nick had obviously got back in the ring and then gone to go? Who broke that news? How was that for you? And of course, it must have been dreadful those couple of months while he was in a coma.
Yeah, the phone went, and it was my other son Daniel, and he said Nick's in the hospital. I said, "What do you mean?"
What did you think straight away? Did you think that they could be linked? Or
I thought it was a joke because he played practical jokes on me all the time.
Right.
So I was expecting Daniel to come to knock on a door with Nick, And I said, "Yeah, all right then, all right." He said, "No, I'll be there in 5 minutes." I said, "All right then." So I was half expecting Nick and Daniel to appear on the door, but it was Daniel, and he looked really worried. And I thought, "Oh, he's telling the truth." So he said, "You need to get over to Southmead Hospital straight away." I thought, "Oh no, not again." So he didn't know, what it was like. He was boxing in, was it Devizes?
Yeah.
And when you get there, what are you greeted by?
We got there, and Nick hadn't even arrived yet.
Why?
He was en route by ambulance, and we were put in his room, A very colourful room. And I said to Dan, I said, this isn't good because they put people in colourful rooms to make you feel better. I thought, don't like this. And nobody was coming to tell us anything, so we had to force information out of them. And they said, oh, he's actually just arrived now. So they said, would you like to see him? He said, yes. So he was just on a stretcher, just looked like he was asleep. But he said he's received a very severe injury to his brain. He thought, oh no. And he said, a person has got a scale 1 to 18, I think. 1, you're dead, or 0, you're dead. 8, 15, you're perfect health. He said, at the moment, your son's on number 1. So he said, that's how serious it is. He
Lucky
said,
I was so fit.
yeah.
I was all there now.
So he was whisked away to have an operation. So
Wow.
yeah, it was very worrying. Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much for coming in. Nick, I think it was Anthony Agogo that was in the studio a couple of weeks back, and I got talking to him about you, and then he said, do you want his number? And I went, I'd love it, because you changed your number, understandably, a couple of times, and we've been in contact a few times, and Jamie as well, been in contact with you. I'm so glad it's worked out that you've come in the studio to tell your story.
Cheers for having me.
John, just quickly there, I'm guessing there are a few people that you want to thank for their incredible work.
Yeah, all the people in Southmead, especially the intensive care people, have done absolutely great job on Nick. And all
I want to say thank you as well.
all the people in Bureau,
Yeah.
which the rehab unit,
Mm-hmm.
done a great job.
Okay.
Really, really good.
And
Saved my life.
they have indeed.
Yeah.
They have indeed. And Jamie, where are you at with the documentary? What's happening? What do you need, if anything?
I'm at a stop at the moment. If I'm honest, just funding, really.
You need funding to get this off the. So you've got all the snippets, you've got all the clips, you've got all the rushes, you've got before, during, and after.
Yeah, I'm a graduate in media production. I've got this, what I personally think could be a fantastic film. But yeah, when it comes to why it's not been pursued, it's funding at the end of the day.
How can people contact you?
On Twitter or Facebook or Instagram.
If you tweet me after the show, I'll retweet it. So
Yep.
if anyone wants to contact you, they can. John, again, sorry to drive you mad and get you in the
That's
studio.
right.
I know you're very comfortable behind the glass, but it's lovely to hear your story as well.
Yeah.
And Nick, how lovely to see you. Thank you so
cheers
much.
for
You live
having me.
absolute miles away. The good news is we'll still be on air when you get home.
Oh, nice.
Really lovely to see you again.
And
Thank you
you,
so
mate.
much for your time. A real
Cheers,
pleasure.
thank you.
Nick Blackwell, wonderful.